How do you manage that? How do you manage showing up in the most authentic way, showing up as Connor every day, leading 60 odd people? So in a way that you also are authentic to yourself and how you're feeling, because there will be some days that Connor is feeling stressed, Connor's feeling not 100%.
Yeah. State management's key, right? And so you got to know yourself, know what, pay attention to your body. Hi, I'm Connor O'Rourke. It's been a pleasure being here on the Open Diaries podcast. I'm the co-founder of Nuaga, which is a IT solutions business. We specialize in managed services and cybersecurity here in South Australia. Entrepreneur is like an interesting word. To be frank with you, when I wanted, I even went and looked it up. It's like, what does that really mean? It's like, okay, somebody that is able to make a bet of their own capital or other people's capital in the hopes that they can gain more. And like, well, that's not really something that I want to be.
What are some of the lessons you've learned about yourself starting? Was there a moment you're like, okay, I need to do something about this particular?
Yeah, there's been countless learning moments along there, and I think that needs to be one of the key things that you value is learning and reflecting and asking for feedback, because you need to fail if you're going to do it properly.
Before we get to this episode, Amin and I had two massive favors to ask. We started this podcast on our passion to connect with interesting people with fascinating stories and sharing those stories with everyone so we can all learn from them.
Now, what's truly fueling our growth and to help us share more stories with some very interesting people, one is our passion of storytelling and really wanting to hear people's stories, because we generally believe in the power of sharing real human stories. But also, your word of mouth and sharing with your family and friends is just as powerful to help us have more reach to people out there. So please, do share it with anyone who you think might benefit from it.
Currently, only a third of you that are listening to us have followed us on whatever platform that you are accessing to our podcast. So we would love to see more of you joining that cohort. So please follow us on whatever platform you're hearing this message on.
For now, let's get into the episode.
Connor, you're a father, you're a husband, you're also part of the Force 40 Under 40 in Daly in South Australia, and you've won Entrepreneur of the Year. You're a co-founder of Nuago, which we'll get to a bit later. But what Ali and I are really interested in is removing all these titles aside for a minute or two and tell me, who is Connor?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think the first thing that always comes to mind for me is kind of playful curiosity, right? So I've just always been, pretty curious about, I think, how things learn and being a voracious learner. I think that's kind of what life's about, is just, trying to, as you get older, better understand yourself. And I love family first and foremost and friends. And I think underpinning all that's probably just connection. I think that's probably what we all look for in life. I think there's probably a little too much, segregation in society of whatever it is. There's so many different ways that people carve up different human existence when I think there's so much commonality to probably focus on. So I don't know. I've always been a person that really likes to travel and meet new people and people from different cultures and trying new foods and new things that might scare me at first. And I don't know if that's probably me on the below the titles or the monikers we apply.
I look at life as a series of dominoes that kind of fall and kind of the end of where we are today. If you were to look at your earlier childhood, what was that the first few dominoes that fell for you that kind of make you end up where you are today?
That's a really good question. I don't know what age we start remembering things that's actually a core memory, or whether because we've been told it, then that's the version we think we remember it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, I was born in a family that moved around a lot, so was always kind of experiencing new places, and had parents that both had professional jobs. That mom was in medical sales, dad worked with a lot of tech companies out of Silicon Valley and around San Diego and Southern California. So we moved around a lot with that sort of stuff, but always, loved team sport and being involved in those sort of things. My parents always insisted on doing, extracurricular activities, and academics were certainly a focus. And, mom's one of 9 kids, the eldest of all the girls that took care of largely her siblings, because both her parents worked. and my old man's the son of a military family, so moved around all the time. And so, yeah, they were, you know, people that taught me a lot about, you know, hard work and resilience, and, you know, couldn't talk back to them and that sort of stuff, which was great, you know. I think America, by and large, probably had a little bit more strictness. You called people's parents Mr. and Mrs. I noticed when I first moved to Australia, they called parents by their first name, and it was a bizarre thing for me when we first moved on. Those just kind of small cultural differences that you pick up in time. But yeah, the first things I remember is probably just, you know, adventure-wise, sliding down this ice vine hill on a little saucer as a kid. I don't know why that comes back to me as you ask me the question now, but I've always liked that sort of stuff of, like, you know, getting on the edge of something and getting out of the comfort zone a little bit. And I guess one of the things I try to live my life by now is finding comfort in those uncomfortable situations. It's kind of one of my personal mottos or values I try to remind myself of when that fear creeps in. You're like, think about all those other times that you've gone through the experience and got to the other side, and you're like, oh, I'm actually glad I did that. It was formative, or it helped you learn something because it had a negative consequence, and to not do that again. And you add that to the kind of recipe going forward of who you are.
I love the saying, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Give us an example of, like, one of the early experiences that you felt it, like, really, that this is very uncomfortable, I don't want to do this, but you went through with it anyway, and then it just became a lesson that you keep referring to, and hence makes you like, yeah, I'm going to give this one a try, because this time I did this thing and I didn't regret it.
Yeah. I guess going back to one of the earliest times I can remember, I mean, martial arts comes up for me. Did a couple different forms of karate with my brother growing up. That teaches you a lot about discipline, but I remember it being, you know, one of those first experiences of doing something that's hard, you know, physically. That I think a lot of those physical challenges is you learn that your mind gives up before your body does. And that's one of the earlier ones that comes to me. But I really got into, you know, the teachings of Wim Hof there for a while around, you know, cold therapy and ice baths and the breath work and those things he does. And that's one of his main kind of philosophies. I've shamelessly stolen that from him, of, you know, finding comfort in discomfort. So I think it's a good philosophy to have, and especially, you know, if you want to take the plunge of, you know, entrepreneurialism or business and that sort of stuff, you need to always kind of be fluid a little bit, because changes do come all the time. And
You mentioned your dad being in the military, and we've had this conversation before. So what was that like growing up? I think from a stability perspective, I know it gives you the resilience.
yeah,
Everything you get taught at West Point, and then you pass it on to your kids. And it is fairly common in the US. I mean, considering the size of the defense force you have.
yes.
But what was that like for you as a child, from your perspective?
So Dad did 2 years at West Point. His father was I believe, a major in the United States Army, so quite high up. A brilliant man. He fought in Korea, was shot numerous times, had a grenade blow up to him, took out one of his hearing, I think in one of his ears. A lot of his men died, you know, and he's early 20s having this kind of experience. And, you know, so he was a tough man, a brilliant man, incredibly smart. So my dad grew up in that family. He was one of three, and they moved all around being a military job wherever he was stationed for the work that he was doing. And so my dad focused on academics, because like me, he moved around a lot. So you focus at sport or academia is kind of those things that you can grab onto if you are moving around. It's another place you can meet other people and whatnot. So he was very academically focused and sporting inclined. So he went to West Point for 2 years and decided at the end of his second year, because he had, you know, gotten very, very far in terms of the mathematical side of things, because they rank you in those schools and things. And I believe he got an award for marksmanship. And he had a conversation with his father, and I only know this because he just wrote the story of his dad, because my dad just turned 70 and he wanted to write the story of his father who's passed away. And I was reading in there, and he said at the end of his second year, he wanted to at least do enough to say to his dad that he wasn't leaving because he couldn't cope. He was like, so I've been able to achieve those things, but he wanted to go and not pursue a military career. So he learned a lot from it. I think he's thankful that he had that experience, but his dad at that stage said, yeah, I'm happy for you to go where you want to. So, he moved out to the west coast of America, went to school out there. So what is that had in terms of maybe the parenting style or the lifestyle I worked with is, well, I think, hard work, resilience, teamwork, I think is critical in a military context. So we always, I think a family, we're a good team unit when we moved. And I think, as both of you are immigrants as well, you do the unit that you relocate with is incredibly important. That kind of first, support network, if you will. So mine was my immediate family with moving out to Australia, which originally was going to be a 5-year kind of trip. And they've been here, I think, 27 years without leaving. I did a stint back in the States, but yeah, Australia's certainly home now. So
Yeah. At what point did you move to Australia? How old were you when you came here?
I was 9 years old when we moved here. So it was 1996 that we came out here, May of 96.
Yeah. And what was like was there like element of cultural shock when you got here and you had to go to school here, I'm assuming?
Yeah, surprisingly there was.
Yeah.
I think because, both the United States and Australia speak English, I thought, oh, everything will be largely the same. But I think it's probably the only thing that's actually the same, which makes it a lot easier because you can at least communicate on a fundamental level. But yeah, food different, culture different. It's a lot more of a melting pot now, which is awesome. But it didn't have as much cultural influence, I think, when I moved here in the 90s. Whereas you can get, any type of cuisine or things in Adelaide now. So
Nice. So at 9 you moved to Australia.
Yeah.
You go to school here, and then and you decide to go back to the United States to do university.
yeah, I did my first year of uni here.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. And you could transfer to a list of like 10 other places, I think. And so I had to look at those, and my passions were, I've always loved sport. Hockey was my main one. So inline hockey, ice hockey. I played even a little bit of field hockey. I love snowboarding as well. So I was like, oh, Colorado has those things in spades. It'd be great to be able to kind of have the hobbies as well as go do the kind of university experience. And so you were able to go for, I think it's up to a year on exchange to one of those schools and still, stay under the uni you're going to here. And so I did that, got towards the end of the year. I was like, I want to stay here. I was having a good time, playing for the collegiate team there, and, being able to snowboard a lot, and met a bunch of people that was, fun to hang out with that were the same age and those things. So ended up staying out there and permanently transferred to that university. So lost some credits on the way that didn't transfer and whatever else. But yeah, spent the better part of 5 years out in northern Colorado, and then moved back here when the GFC really started to play out on the job market. You're spilling out of uni without a whole lot of different opportunities at that kind of 2009 when it was really starting to unfold.
I think both Ali and I are very curious about this question. Because you migrated to Australia and then you went back to live in the US.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine either Ali, if I'm doing this right now, that would really play up with my identity a little bit. How did you feel? I mean, you went back to play sports, playing hockey, field hockey. Uni life is all about uni life, especially the American college life. Let's be clear. There's a big distinction between US and Australia, right?
Yeah.
And you can maybe touch on that. But how did you feel throughout that whole process, and what led you to come back eventually? Because
Yeah.
you can say you're American, but you're also somewhat Australian.
I tell people I sound American, but I feel Australian. It's sometimes it is hard because when I moved back there, you wouldn't believe me, but I did not sound American at all. Because I had moved here when I was 9, right? So I was young enough, so the accent started to wear off and those sort of things, and I wasn't around it other than my parents sounding like Yanks at home. So I was always around because like my mates and everything, they would all speak with an Australian accent. So sometimes like I'll even use Australian words, but I say them as an American. People look at me strange, and I'm like, okay, yeah. So I think even my vocabulary has turned Australian, but it's said with this American tone, so it can be confusing for people. But when I went back, probably within 3 months, it was fully American again because I wasn't around a single Australian accent. Because I just lived I decided to move into the dorms to meet people because I didn't know anyone. I was just some random kid on a foreign exchange going back, but the foreign exchange I was on was from the country that I was born in. So yeah, it was a little bit strange, but it's your identity, I think, just is a formation of all those sort of things that you actually do along the way. So I do notice certain elements of both of those things that play out in who I am today. But yeah, at times but I feel like I'm quite malleable to understanding both of the cultures when I need to, or more broadly any of the places that you travel to. I think you get more informed, or if you've got mates from certain places, like one of my best mates when I was in high school was from Dubai. So, being around him all the time, I feel like there was parts of his culture that just by being friends with him, you get naturally exposed to and that stuff as well, which maybe that forms part of your identity in the longer run.
So you graduated just when the GFC hit?
Yes.
What happened after that?
So I gotta take life seriously, right? Snowboarding and playing hockey is not a way to be able to pay the bills. And the arrangement with the old man is going, you gotta, it's now time to go be a man and get out there and fend for yourself and those things. And, you miss being around family. So I didn't have that support network, and going, well, I didn't want to stay in journalism. There wasn't a plethora of jobs that were just there for the taking, because, I think sometimes, I get this certificate and all of a sudden these jobs are available, which for some that probably happens at timing and location, but that wasn't the case. So came back just to visit family over Christmas. I wasn't anticipating moving back here. Ended up meeting some great people that were working in a company that my dad was involved with, called Datacom, and had some coffee with those guys because I'd met them growing up working in my old man's previous company on school holidays and things. Same sort of people that they were working with in the iteration of this company that they were in. And we had a coffee, and I said, we've got this entry-level sales role coming up. Would you consider moving back to Adelaide? And I thought about it over the next few weeks and consulted with my dad, who's a mentor of mine in a big way. And I said, well, it's a great way to get into the professional world, and you got to start to build a resume and whatever else. And so I moved back to the States after that Christmas holiday, and said, well, I'm going to sell everything up in the house I was renting with a bunch of flatmates, and sell the car. And I was back here a month later and starting, becoming an adult and getting a paycheck properly and those sort of things. So,
was it all you imagined adulthood?
Oh, it sucked, huh? No, it was great to get involved in something, because the business I joined was really on a great growth trajectory. I had a bunch of wonderful mentors to learn under. And it's so important to be in the right place at the right time as well. Like I was really lucky in that regard, right? To be around those wonderful people that take you under their wing, because sometimes, other people don't take the time to teach and to develop others and those things. So I'm really thankful for having those folks around me when I did, because it was formative in, I think, helping me shape my business career and where I was going to go from that age.
You've mentioned your dad quite a lot today. How's your mum doing?
My mom's awesome. My mom is, I've got a lot of personality traits like my mom. So she's got, Irish blood.
That's
really.
probably why you like your dad too.
What's that? Probably. Yeah, I guess because, in the context of business, he was there directly with that. But my mom is like the most organized human being you'll ever encounter in the world. Keeps our whole lives together as kids growing up. Could just juggle 1,000 things at once. And I asked her one time, I was like, how do you get everything done that you get done in a day? She said, I just don't go to sleep until I get done what I was going to get done for the day. And phenomenal human being. Like, she's the toughest person, survived cancer, is a gritty person, and always was the one that told me to get back up, get back on the horse. She's a badass. Not a lady you want to mess with, because she's, fiercely protective of her family, but very intelligent, the life of the party, can cook like an absolute chef. She's been a huge part of my growth, and is absolutely a big part of who I am.
How important is it to have that type of influence in your life? Some people don't have that.
Yeah. I'm the luckiest person I know. So I genuinely believe that. I don't say that as a token thing. It's a lottery. You win the lottery sometimes when you just, because of where you're born and in the place you're born. I think about, all the third world countries in the world, all the horrible war-torn situations that you could be in and be born into, and never have the opportunity to even escape that. I can't imagine So yeah, luck of the draw, and I'm so lucky to have those folks around me because there's no way that I could be able to be as fortunate as I am today without the guidance of those sorts of folks like my parents and some of the other mentors that I've had. That's for damn sure.
So you work your way up in data.com,
Yes.
and then you decide it's time to move on.
Yeah. I had always kind of been exposed to the tech scene or business kind of Silicon Valley stuff just because by nature of what my dad had done. And I actually didn't see myself necessarily being in it. I had went to study journalism and psychology and found myself back in tech, right at the end of the studies. So, yeah, really, I started at dot.com. It really taught me about sales. It taught me about, dealing with all elements of a business. And I'd kind of done a lot of that in work experience sort of stuff when I was growing up as a teenager, because I got to do kind of secondments in different areas of my parents' company. So that taught me a lot of those elements, and then the actual craft of selling and customer service and some of the elements in marketing to an extent I learned through there. And yeah, I've always kind of had a little bit of that spirit of wanting to create. And we thought there was an addressable area of the market that we could put something together that would service, I think, an unmet need. And yeah, we decided to put the chips on the table and have a go at it. Yeah.
And that was the birth of Nuego.
That was the birth of Nuego, that's correct.
And I believe that's a big part of the title Entrepreneur of the Year. Going back to titles.
Oh, man. I would think that's probably a big part of what's helped me get that award. I didn't expect to get it. But Nuago has been a wonderful part of my life. Certainly a difficult journey because you learn a lot about yourself. And, when you have to lead people, I think it's certainly a journey with yourself through the whole way of, really reflecting and figuring out, am I doing the right things the business, the people in the organization, the culture needs from me at this point in time? Because you get to these different kind of plateaus or glass ceilings and you go, all right, you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, what's the next phase? Am I standing in the way of the development of the organization or of the individuals in the business? So that's certainly something that it's taught me. And, fortunately, as one of the shareholders of the business and as one of the exec team and founders, I've got to accept an accolade for that. But it's certainly, it's a team, it's an organization, it's a living thing of its own that, when I'm not there, it's still operating in the same fashion than if I am, right? So, yeah, it's been a fun 7 years. We just turned 7 years. We won July.
Congrats.
So thank you. It seems like yesterday, but it also seems like forever ago. And it's a strange feeling, right? Like you look at it and go, I can remember the things so vividly of startup mode like yesterday, but it also seems like an eternity at times because I don't know if other people get that with the almost the time warp that the pandemic caused, is that you weren't living out 3 years in advance. You were living until the next press conference about what the rules were. And so I think that led to a lack of kind of safety and security for people and being able to see the long run and those sort of things. So it's good to see everybody looking outwards again and looking forward at stuff.
So, yeah, to your point, it's very nice and feels good when you get, I suppose, that accolade.
Yeah.
But people don't see the hard work. People don't see all the grunt you've done in the background. This whole misconception we have today, we live in this world of just like attention economy, instant gratification. Oh my God, here's an overnight success.
Yeah.
Right. And I really want to almost debunk this myth, maybe by asking a simple question, like, what does the entrepreneurial mindset or the grit really come down to that you think helped you throughout the way? And what should the average person, Susan or Michael listening today, should care about it? Could they even use it if they're not starting something new in their life? Or
I think that there's elements of it that everybody can probably use. Going out and starting a business isn't the path that everyone's going to walk, nor should they. I think there's different personality archetypes and there's different desires to do things. And That's why you get so many different types of folks in the economy. We're more of a gig economy now, where people are able to express themselves in the way that they want to work. So, yeah, I think entrepreneur is like an interesting word. You know, to be frank with you, when I wanted, I even went and looked it up, and I was like, what does that really mean? It's like, okay, somebody that is able to make, you know, a bet of their own capital or other people's capital in the hopes that they can gain more. And I'm like, well, that's not really something that I want to be. Is something that you know, I aspire to. Oh, that's great, I was able to do things with cash. It's more about the ability to be a leader and to have a vehicle, a forum, a vessel to be able to impact other people and to lead and to connect with others is really what I've found is the most rewarding part of it. It's that the journey of the whole thing. It's not chasing some arbitrary, I think, destination. It's enjoying the process.
If you were to sum up your experience starting Nuego into number of lessons, how would you do it?
How long will you want this podcast to go for?
We're here for as long as you want us to be, Clement.
I mean, some of the lessons is you got to be absolutely, you know, courageous and brave, but that doesn't mean not having emotions and not showing that days are difficult and, you know, vulnerable, authenticity, but still having the courage to do it. Going, yeah, I mean, I am scared to do this, or it has been a bad day. You know, they've just said that, you know, the whole business dynamic, and unfortunately people are losing their lives because of these things. These things come along and you're still a human being through the whole process. So, man, it's, you know, that I'm not a big social media person, but no filter on an entrepreneurial journey. It's bloody hard. There's lots of ups and downs. Every person I've ever spoken to that's gone the journey and survived it, because a lot of businesses don't make it. I think 80% of businesses don't make it to 5 years, and 80% of those businesses don't make it to 10. So it's a small fraction of those organizations that actually, I think, you know, take off into the wind, get enough trajectory to clear the trees and the mountain at the end of the runway, and you know, kind of take flight with it. So yeah, it's you know, it's an endurance journey. You can't sprint the marathon that is running a company, and you just try to find what's the gear you can maintain. You know, like the Kenyan runners, I don't know if you've ever seen, they always dominate these long distance events globally. It's like, you know, think about how you got to run a long distance race. You don't go slow, you don't go too fast to burn yourself out. But they find this gear. If you ever watch them, they're just incredible at their long distance running, like the 10K plus sort of stuff. So I think that's a really good parallel you can draw between the style and why they tend to do so well in those events. They've obviously got a great philosophy behind how to do that. There's a good one there for the business startup or entrepreneur journey.
Quick one. Can you please take a second and follow us on whatever platform you're listening to us from?
What are some of the lessons you've learned about yourself starting Nuego? Was there a moment you're like, okay, I need to do something about this particular?
Yeah, there's been countless learning moments along there, and I think that needs to be one of the key things that you value, is learning and reflecting and asking for feedback, because you need to fail if you're going to do it properly. If you're not trying hard enough, you're not pushing things hard enough. I've tried to be less up and down with emotions and more channeled with them, because I'm a very like energetic and passionate human being. So I'm working with all the different personality types that you do experience in business or with your clients or with your vendor partner relationships. You need to be able to deal with many different types that are not your flow state necessarily. And so I think the biggest way to work well with others is by listening. And so I think if there's the biggest thing that I've probably learned through the 7 years, at least with Nuago, it's to shut the F up a little bit more and to listen, because it's amazing what you hear if you truly listen, not sit there and prepare a bunch of thoughts in your head so that you can impress somebody at the other end of it with what you know. It's, you know, demonstrate that empathetic listening style where that person feels heard, and allow time for people to actually think. Just pepper them with questions. And I'm big on the human being side of leadership. You know, you got your leadership, you got management, you got accountability, but you know, I think you've got to connect with the person first and foremost and realize that every human's that uniquely keyed lock, that you've got to understand how to work with the individual, because there's no real blanket leadership style. I think there's management frameworks we can put over the top of everybody, but there's no one size fits all leadership.
Yeah. I can vouch that you're a great listener.
Oh,
From
thank
the
you.
conversation we had earlier.
I really enjoyed it.
You can tell the people that actively listen when the moment you engage with them in a conversation, they ask a question and you can like, this person's actually listening to me.
Yeah.
And then you feel like, oh, I can start sharing a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and then that's how the connections are built, right?
Yeah.
And within personal space as well as professional.
We've got less opportunity to engage, and like there's less windows to do that because everybody's always looking down at their bloody smartphone, right? Which they're great tools, but they've just become so overutilized that it's even causing postural problems for people because they're always rolling their shoulders forward. That there's a lot more people getting back problems. Even I even developed some because I'm typing all the time or on my phone, and when I saw a specialist, and he's like, yeah, you can develop genuinely bodily challenges as a result of too much time on screens and those sort of things, right?
That's Ali's favorite topic, the attention economy, and I've actually learned that from Ali. And going back to your point around listening, I'm pretty sure it's the 6th or 7th habit in the book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you think about it, there's a bloody reason why it's not the first or the second or the third or the fourth, because they're in that order for a reason. He talks about it in the book. But now that you've got it and you can reflect back on it, how did that translate to your personal life? Because Ali and I had these interesting adjacent learnings on the podcast that really helped us personally and professionally. I'm curious to hear, how did active listening on your end go from business to personal, whether it's your children, your wife, your best mates, whoever it may be?
Yeah, that's a really good one, right? 7 Habits by Stephen Covey is a timeless book that's brilliant. Everybody that's in our business has the opportunity to learn that as a program. My pops runs, not to talk about him too much again, but that's something that he still comes back into the business to do, to give back, to give people, great foundational life lessons to live by in those things. It's optional completely for people, but I've done it numerous times and gained something new every single time through doing it. And I mean, those first 3 habits are about self and the other 3 about others. So when you introduce somebody talking, that's one of those skills, like you said, about listening. How is that translated to my personal life? Positively, I think. It's amazing how much you actually just hear if you truly listen. One of the things that I'm still learning to this day is that sometimes listening is actually what the person needs, not a solution.
It's so hard for men.
Yes. Especially when you're sitting there like in business all day long. Like, my job's kind of to make decisions, right? I want to make less and less of them as I go on in my career and empower people so that they are. So continue to work on delegation with that. But I got to catch myself. You got to remind yourself. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through the business as well, is, that how you show up is the most important thing. So what's going on for you? Because are you bringing in a stressed out state or whatever else it is? And, it takes practice to become a good listener. There's no class for it, really. You go to listening school.
How do you manage that? How do you manage showing up in the most authentic way, showing up as Connor every day and leading 60 odd people? So in a way that you also are authentic to yourself and how you're feeling, because there will be some days that Connor is feeling stressed, Connor's feeling not 100%, but you want to show up in the sense that the other 60 odd people, when they see you, they'll be like, I don't know.
State management's key. Right? And so you got to know yourself, know what, pay attention to your body. If you feel your heart rate starting to move. I went and did Unleash the Power Within, a Tony Robbins thing back in like 2013 with some people, and you walk on hot coals at the end of the first day and stuff. And he's a pretty incredible person. I think some people think he's a big kind of rah American dude, but I really valued going to it. I was skeptical at first, but really liked going to it. And I think a lot of what he talks about is state management and how you show up and how to bring yourself back into a state where you can trigger immediately being able to bring that energy in. He makes you go through an exercise with that. But I've always found that just, breathing is we all do it. It's something that's always there. Different people get meditation or mindfulness or centering themselves in different ways through their faith or spirituality or whatever it is for different people. It's all pretty common in my opinion. There's a big common theme there. So really try to make sure that I'm practicing that. I think often if you just take a few deep breaths or do a bit of box breathing or a little bit of meditation, you very quickly just, cool, you get back in the moment and live in the moment rather than thinking about the zillion things you've got. So you got to have a good time management system to know that you're not going to drop a bunch of priorities and everything else as well. That allows for you then to probably be where you are, with that person, because people can always sense if you're thinking about other things, or you're checking your watch, or glancing at your phone, or your smartwatch, or something popping up.
I want to dig a bit more because I've watched this beautiful episode with Tim Grover, who was coaching Michael Jordan and a few other athletes for a while, and I'm sure you know who he is. And he essentially talks about it from the perspective of alter ego for memory.
Okay.
And different people have different triggers, whether pretty much what you say, whether it's more of a spiritual or physical. Some very senior executive he's actually coached have the photo of their grandma or their mum, right, sitting on their desk. And all they have to do is like rotate it or just twist it. Or some of them, they just have to do like a little gesture with the arm or like touch the collar. It's literally a trigger, switch states. But that topic always just baffled me. Like, is it really that straightforward? Obviously, there's practice.
Yes.
You meditate, you work on yourself. But have you managed to figure out what are your triggers that I think have worked for you? Like, how do you find that like key to switch states? Because it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, it's probably a hard thing to put words around exactly what the observations I have for myself, but it's really like I think the breath is the easiest way to do it, is because if you start to shorten your breath and you're stopping breathing and those sort of things, you just start to then feel different emotions and those sort of things. If you're starving your body of oxygen, so I think it's just always just trying to go, all right, where's my breathing at? That breathing then starts to slow the thinking down and go, all right, in the grand scheme of things, how big is this? I do this exercise where I just kind of explode out of my own mind to, being in an airplane at 14,000 feet and then back down to where I am. And one of the things I learned in NLP and the neurolinguistics programming stuff is how to go through the different kind of perspectives, which removes you from the first person and lets you be that person in an airplane looking down on the situation. There's several levels between doing that. There's a technique that you can do for it. But I've always found that now, because I learned that technique and got better at it, you kind of get over things quicker or get back down to being in a more relaxed state. If you go through more experiences and challenges, you kind of just become a little bit more, I guess, relaxed about things when they do come. You expect that there's going to be, roadblocks, challenges, things that come up, and you just roll with them a little bit easier. That whole be like water. I can't remember who said that. Bruce Lee, maybe?
Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Hi, this is your co-host Ali. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I hope you are enjoying it. At this point of the recording, for some reason, Connor's camera went out of focus and the image became blurry. We truly apologize for any inconvenience. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
So in essence, you remove yourself from the circumstances that you're in.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it from above, like, well, how important this is. Is it actually as bad as I am making it to be? Right? That's exactly what it is, yeah. I was actually telling this to my partner the other day because she was going through something. I'm like, you're so caught up in all this. Just step out of it. I'm like, just step out of it. And if you were looking at it from above, what would you tell yourself? She's like, I would tell myself this. I'm like, okay, how do you feel? I think I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be like, well, okay, let's change the names in the scenario. So it's like us in this room, you just change it to some other people's names. And you're like, okay, so if this scenario was happening to X, Y, and Z people, what would you tell them? And I think there's just that, even that subtle change of it's other people's names. How would I advise other people? You can kind of start to arrive at maybe, diffusing the situation for yourself, or realizing that it is not as big or as bad as you think it is.
Before, this is completely off topic. Before we started the episode, we had a chat about social media.
Yes.
And you told me that you don't have any personal social media.
Yeah, I do have a LinkedIn, but
yeah. For someone that's in tech, what's your philosophy behind social media? Because that's an area that I'm very, very interested in.
Yeah, there's some good outcomes for people. I'm not going to say that there's not around social media. I had it when I was in university. You had to have a university email account to get Facebook, because Zuckerberg started that, and it was supposed to be a university thing. And then obviously it grew from there. I think everybody's probably seen that movie and seen the ridiculous thing that human being, if he's a human being, has done to society. He's a bit of a droid at times, I think. But social media is largely, powered by artificial intelligence. That kind of first contact we had with AI really was spurred through that. And, Social Dilemma is obviously a very good movie with some very smart people that talk about that competition, the attention economy, and trying to keep eyeballs and keep scrolling. And I think the guy who even invented that technology regrets ever doing it because of what it's done. And I think most people don't realize how much time they actually spend on there and the amount of good things that they could be doing to nurture their life and have authentic experiences. And, I always find it strange when you go see someone and you got to have a chat, like, what'd you do on the weekend? They already know, because you put up every picture you had of your breakfast and applied whatever filters to make you look like you didn't have, a poor night's sleep because your kids were waking you up or whatever it was, or there was a storm. So yeah, I feel like it's a little disingenuous. I think it's great to keep in contact with other people, but I think it's perpetuating a lot of negative things. And, as a father now, I'm not thrilled about the society they might be exposed to. So I'm continuously asking myself questions about how do I assist in, guiding them to make good choices so that they can, continue to do that when I'm not, impacting them as much under my own roof and those things at home.
You touched on a very big topic now, Ali, and we'll wrap it up in a bit. I mean, social media is very interesting, and you work in tech. But I always ask myself the question, is this really a tech problem or a human problem?
Correct. You got to have tech for purpose. Even in what I do, from a consultative and what we supply as a business, the same thing. You got to start with, why are you doing it? Because you get people with magpie syndrome, right? The flashy, cool tech stuff. It's like, oh my God, it's exciting. Well, why do you need this? Oh, because Apple just said it's cool now. So, some influencer got paid tons of money to promote this product, which hasn't even been scientifically tested, and we haven't done any longitudinal studies on these things. So I think we're just so quick to accept, the term instant gratification came up before. I think, we're losing touch with what it's like to sit with our own thoughts. There was one of those studies done that I think people would rather, in 15 minutes of spending time with their own thoughts, they would rather get an electric shock. I can't remember the name of the study or whatever it was, but that was baffling to me. Absolutely baffling. You can't sit for 15 minutes. You prefer to get physically harmed. That's interesting. That's pretty telling about society and where we are.
So I think we might have listened to the same podcast recently, because that was on one of the Diary of the CEO podcasts.
I do love me some Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah, love Stephen Bartlett. We both do. And I think the setup was, you've walked in, they did it in a hospital or in a clinic setting where you're in a waiting room. And they said, hey, everyone, just letting you know, there's a machine there you can play with. It's a 30-minute wait, but feel free if you want to use it or just wait in the room. And they just obviously monitored everyone. And only, I think, less than a third, I think basically over 70-80% of the people went and started playing with the machine, and they were getting electrocuted. And they were doing it again, not to sit down with their thoughts.
Wow.
Just reminds me of that Simpsons episode where Bart keeps grabbing the cupcake that zaps him. Is that what we've come to?
What I fear is that this generation, our generation, we have had experience before social media came about, right? So we have an understanding what that's like. People that grow up that are getting raised in this era where they'll have no idea of what it's like to live without social media.
Yes.
I fear that.
Yeah.
And where that will go.
Yeah. And that's why I can't have it, because I know it's better at keeping my attention than my ability to not look at the, black slab I keep in my pocket that's got an LCD screen on it. So I was like, well, I just won't have it, because you do end up, it's designed incredibly well by a machine that's smarter than us. So it's going to keep you captive a lot of the time.
I think I nailed it. Social media and how I use it.
Yeah.
until I bought the new iPhone.
Okay.
I
What
bought
changed?
I bought a new iPhone, and there's something about this bloody screen they've created. It's so nice. I'm just want to kind of stare at it for a while.
It's a work of art.
Yeah, it's very nice. But I bought it for this podcast. So
Okay.
I bought it so we can record as it's sitting there right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
But I can't help but just be on it, because before that I had social media, but I didn't have it on my phone, so I didn't have any access. And I probably would look at my phone once a day. I would not take it to work with me.
Yeah, right.
I would not take it out with me. I would not take it anywhere with me. I had like a work phone that I would. This is just what I'm saying around the way they design this thing, even from a hardware perspective. For me, I'm like, well, this thing is really.
Yeah. Think about how stressed you see or panicked people you see. I don't have my phone. We've become, myself too, where it's just like you need to always be able to be in contact with people. I'm like, imagine dropping someone from today into like, early 1900s. Like, let's go to the World War I and be like, all right, you've got to write a letter to let somebody know that they've even passed away in war, that they might not get for months. Yet if we can't, get the latest picture of our friend's eggs Benedict, we're our day turns to shit. I'm being a little facetious, but
No, I agree with you. Totally. Oh man, this conversation is just heating up. But I'm so conscious of your time, Connor.
No, it's all good.
We end the tradition something similar to the IFCO. The last guest has left you a question,
Oh, nice.
and I'm gonna play it for you.
Do you have a moment of failure that you look back at and reflect on today and think that wasn't too bad and you kind of made it through?
Oh man, what failure to pick. Yeah, I guess one of my biggest fears is probably not having failed enough, because it means I'm probably not trying hard enough. I don't really want to get comfortable. I kind of have a hard time sitting still. I've had countless failures in business, in sport, in just the decisions that I've made in life. To narrow it down to one would be almost challenging, right? Because I think I try to live where I am constantly failing. I made a big one in our business where I dropped the ball and something cost us a lot of money. It was like, I don't know, 50 or 60 grand when we were a small company, and it was my mistake because I wasn't diligent enough on something. That I felt like my heart was stopping when I learned about that one. But it taught me a hell of a lot, like that I needed to get a better detail focus on things and, grow from the experience. So that one I remember wearing pretty badly because it was directly my fault. I made the mistake. Yeah, it was, somebody ripped us off, but I was lackadaisical in my approach, and yeah, it hit pretty hard.
Connor, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
You both as well.
And in the podcast.
Yes, thank you for taking the time. It's actually been really, really fun. What an awesome Friday, evening, and a way to wrap it up to kick off the weekend.
Well, thank you guys for hosting me. I mean, here at Lot 14, and you're both such energetic and passionate people that I'm sure it won't be the last of the discussions we have. So a privilege to come.
Thank you for listening. I'm sure this episode has really resonated with you, but we'd love to know which part. We would love to get your feedback, so please do reach out to us via our website or any of our social media platforms. You can find these through any of the links attached to this episode.